everybody, my name's Holly and this is my January 2020 wrap-up, and I'm just gonna go through them in the order that I read them. The first book that I finished up this month was At the Edge of the Universe by Sean David Hutchinson. At the Edge of the Universe is about a teenage boy named Ozzy who is trying to find his boyfriend who has disappeared and no one else remembers that he even existed. As well, he's noticing that the universe is rapidly shrinking. And he starts talking to another kid and he's sort of dealing with his life. So it's kind of like a contemporary with like a bit of a sci-fi twist to it. But this book just felt very similar to his other books. I felt like I'd read it before, even though the premise was different. It was still about a queer teenage boy with a slight sci-fi twist that only he seems to notice or know about or something, which isn't bad. I still enjoyed it. It just felt a little redundant. I think I would have rated it higher if I hadn't read his other books previously. It probably would have been like a 4-star read. It wasn't bad. It was good. It just felt like I'd done it before. I actually read most of the next book in December, like right up to New Year's countdown, but I didn't finish it till January, so I'm counting it for January. And that is Magnus Chase and the Ship of the Dead by Rick Riordan. I was reading this out loud to my boyfriend. He's never read the Magnus Chase books, but he really likes Riordan's other stuff. So we finally finished the series. This is the third book in the Magnus Chase trilogy, and it is classic Riordan sort of middle grade mythology book, but Norse mythology. I loved these books so much. The representation in them, the humor, the plot, just the Norse mythology itself. I did also start rereading the Artemis Fowl series this month, but I'm going to post another video with more thoughts and details into my journey of my year of rereading books. So I just want to quickly mention that I read them. I did read Artemis Fowl by Erin Colfer, which is the first book in the series. The fourth book that I read in January was actually a little novella, I'm counting it anyways, called The Seventh Dwarf by Owen Colfer, which falls in the Artemis Fowl series. The next book that I actually read on audiobook, and it was called We Are the Flame by Hafsa Faisal. Hunt the Flame was supposed to be a fantasy book with Arabic sort of mythology lore setting, and I went into it not really knowing much about the plot, and unfortunately, as much as I really, really wanted to enjoy it, I just didn't. I found the plot dull and meandering and repetitive. The writing was just okay. The characters ranged from okay to boring, and I didn't care about anything that was happening. The mythology seemed to be really shallow and it didn't feel very well developed. I'm just thoroughly disappointed with this story. I really, really wanted to like it. I was so excited about it for so long, and it unfortunately let me down. The next book that I read I also did on audiobook, and that was Rain and Delilah's Midnight Matinee by Jeff Sentner. And Jeff Sentner's previous books are very, very sad, and I was scared going into this that that would be the case with this one, but fortunately it wasn't a tragic exploration of grief, and it was a lot lighter than his previous books. Rain and Delilah's Midnight Matinee is about two teenage girls who host a horror show on public access television, and it's also about their friendship and about, you know, growing up and getting ready to leave high school and take the next step in their life. And what I really, really enjoyed about this friendship is that even though there's a romance and there's a lot of other plot going on, the main point of the story is the girls' friendship. And I love stories that focus on friendship, and I think this one did it really, really well. The intricacies, the wit, the dynamic between them was just so much fun and so truly well developed. I definitely recommend this book if you're looking for something that deals more with friendship. The next book that I finished up was another audiobook, because I read this one so fast because I enjoyed it so much, and that was Suggested Reading by Dave Konis. And this is a book about a girl who finds out that there is a list of banned books at her school, and so she starts running a secret library out of her locker. It's a book that deals heavily with themes of censorship and access to media, and I really, really enjoyed it. I'm pretty sure I gave this one 5 stars. The main character was so much fun, so hilarious, so nerdy. I wanted her to be my best friend, or maybe I just want to be her. I wish I knew her in real life. If she had a YouTube channel, like a booktube channel, I would so follow her. She was just so interesting and so well thought, and I just really, really enjoyed her as a character. And I loved the themes about censorship and about banned books, and it made me want to read all the banned books, books that I've heard of that I know are sort of in the banned book list, but I've never actually gone and picked up before, like Catcher in the Rye, for example, and I'd like to give these books a chance. I highly recommend it. I think it was probably my favorite book of the month. I then made my way through 2 more Artemis Fowl books, so the second book in the series, The Arctic Incident, as well as The Eternity Code, both by Owen Colfer. I then went through another audiobook called Rebel Girls by Elizabeth Keenan, and this was a book set in the 90s about a girl who's sort of exploring the Riot Grrrl themes and messages and lifestyle, and is also dealing with an abortion rumor and controversy at her very Catholic high school. And it's also about sisters and friendship and just girl power and sticking together. Like, the tagline of the book is "Stand with the girl beside you." I enjoyed this book. I gave it 3 or 4 stars. I think it was more like a 3.5. The writing was a little weak. The sort of plot throughout the book was a little bit slow, and I really wanted more of the Riot Grrrl scene and that I thought I was going to get with this. As well, through the first quarter of the book or so, I had no idea that this book was set in the 90s. I was very confused about some of the slang and the technology and just the opinions of a lot of people. It wasn't until I looked it up online that I got a description of the book that mentioned that it's set in the 90s. And I don't know, I wanted more out of it. I wanted more discussion, I wanted more exploration, I wanted it to dig a little bit deeper, and it just didn't. Which is no fault of the book, it's just my expectations were a little bit higher and it didn't quite reach that level. I still really enjoyed it, and I really enjoyed the girl power and the team up of pro-life and pro-choice girls trying to help a girl that's dealing with an abortion rumor. I thought that was really well handled. And I would still definitely recommend this book. It wasn't bad, it just wasn't quite what I was expecting. And then following that, I started another audiobook called In Other Lands by Sarah Rees Brennan, which has been on my radar for a while, and I finally got a hold of it at the library. And it was really, really fun. It was sort of a parody exploration of the Chosen One trope, but particularly in children's literature. And it also explored a lot of topics of culture and gender and sexuality, and all in this really humorous way. If you're a fantasy fan, you have to pick this up, because it's just poking fun in a really loving way of all the tropes and world building and Chosen One narratives, and I really, really had a lot of fun with this. It felt like the author was, through the text, having a conversation with you, being like, oh yeah, you know, Chosen Ones and languages and cultures of magical worlds and world building, and just sort of tweaking little things, making comments that make you think about a little bit deeper about Chosen One narratives, and I just had so much fun with this book. I gave it 5 stars. I don't know. This might have also been my favorite book. It's tied with suggested reading. I would definitely recommend it to anyone who's a fantasy fan. I don't know, it's like the kind of book that I want to go and compare it to a bunch of children's fantasy, say Narnia or Alice in Wonderland or something, and actually write a paper. Sometimes I miss university. But I had it building in my head, this paper that I would write as I was reading it. And then the final book that I finished in January was for Canada Reads, and it was called From the Ashes by Jesse Thistle. And it's a memoir about Jesse Thistle's life. He's a Métis Cree man, and he goes through his childhood and into how he became a drug addict and his time living on the streets of Toronto. And it's such a difficult read. It hurts to know that someone really went through this and that lots of people go through this, and it just kept going and going, and it was harder and harder to read. But the ending was really raw and beautiful and cathartic after all of that, and I think he wrote it beautifully. I feel like I can't give a rating to a memoir, a story about someone's life and their grief and their suffering and their journey. But it was a really wonderful read. It was very difficult at times to keep going. I just kept going, this is your rock bottom, right? This is where it gets better, and it just wasn't. But I really, really feel that the ending made the journey you go on as a reader, and it feels almost mean to say this, worth it. It's worth it to make it through the end of that book. I read 12 books in the month of January, and I think that is a pretty great start to the year. I, read lots of great audiobooks, I started into Canada Reads, and I made a pretty good start into my journey of rereading for the year. And I'm pretty proud that I actually read as many physical books as I did. I've been trying to cut down on Netflix a bit, and I think I did a pretty good job. Thank you so much for watching this video, and until next time, bye!